Tony, he technically wins a lot of the battles that he's been in so far, but every single battle he's actually lost, if you think about it.
Yeah.
He's just losing more and more of his mental state.
Yeah.
Once he time travels, he fixes everything, he has the big battle with Thanos, he sacrifices himself, and ultimately that shows that he just kept pushing. He kept pushing to be a better person. He went from a selfish, egotistical arms dealer to a man who knows how to sacrifice for the good of others, right?
Yeah.
Tony Stark's death had a lot of implications in the MCU. Just because Robert Downey Jr. has left the billionaire playboy philanthropist behind, it doesn't mean Iron Man will never be a factor in the MCU again. We'll have a look at Iron Man's journey from start to snap. We'll talk about potential plot lines that could evolve from Tony Stark's death, and how, if at all, Iron Man could return to the MCU even without Mr. Jr. involved. We'll show you that Iron Man is indeed immortal in the MCU. My name is Callum, and I am joined by the wonderful Zach. Zach, my boy, tell me you're in your favorite Iron Man hoodie right now.
Well, I mean, of course. I've got my repulsors on and everything. Let's do this, man.
I've actually got an Iron Man pop figure on my desk just to get me in the mood to talk about the most sarcastic Avenger in the MCU.
Nice.
Let's just jump right into it. How were you first introduced into Iron Man, and what did you think of him from the start?
I think I watched the first MCU Iron Man movie, so our first big MCU movie. I think I saw that like a year after it came out. Stores would let you like rent movies and stuff, and we watched it for a family movie night, and I was like, this guy is so cool, but he's nothing like that cartoon character that I saw all those years ago. This guy's selling weapons to terrorists. What's going on here, Mr. Stark, Mr. RDJ?
Well, Iron Man is a drastically different character to the comics, but he was also drastically different when he just started out compared to whenever he, made his exit from the MCU. He was very disconnected to the effects that his actions had on the world. Once he learned in Iron Man 1 that his weapons were being used by terrorists, he decided, you know what? I'm going to take those weapons and use them myself, to
defeat terrorists.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of relying on other people, he's just like, yeah, I'll do it myself.
Exactly.
I am Iron Man. I'm the only one who can do it. Tony becoming aware of his actions and the world he lives in are the many different aspects of what changed Tony. Iron Man 1, he decides to take a step back from building weapons for sale.
Yep.
And then in Iron Man 2, he realizes that his presence, his legacy, has created problems in the world. And of course, he creates a whole new element.
He's just sitting there casually and he's like, I've got some time to kill before lunch. May as well just discover a new element on the periodic table. Open up a whole new subsection for that right there.
Whenever Avengers Assembled happened, right? He was this guy who was like, I don't play well with others.
Oh God, yeah.
Guy,
Dude
right?
was such a loner.
and arguably, I think that this movie, Avengers Assemble, is whenever his paranoia begins. Right?
Oh yeah.
Because during 1 and 2, he's still kind of like sort of confident and stuff like that. But after Avengers Assemble, after he almost dies, and Hulk basically is like, I'm gonna shout you. I'm gonna be so angry that you have to live.
It's perfect setup, by the way. Like the whole PTSD angle, I didn't think that's where they were gonna go, but oh my God, I absolutely love that. Like I actually really do. Just going through all those movies and seeing like every little aspect of his like deterioration of his mental state. Like when is the big purple like chin man gonna come to Earth? And like what's going on? I'm waiting, bro. I'm waiting.
Like, Tony's suffering from PTSD in Iron Man 3. You see him shouldering a lot on his back.
Oh, yeah.
He becomes hyper-focused on being, like, the only one who can protect Earth. The Iron Legion almost represents the growing anxiety of Tony. The more that are made, the more he's like, oh, God. At the end of the movie, obviously, he blows up all the suits for Pepper Potts. And that kind of seems to, like, waylay his like PTSD. I mean, when I was in the theater, all I could think about when those things were blowing up was 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, solving world hunger there, maybe
Just for what? For your girl, you simp?
After Iron Man 3, though, thanks to the Scarlet Witch, he's straight back to being paranoid again. You know, he kind of relapses. And okay, I don't know if you'll agree with me here, Zach. People say that Tony's decision in Civil War was so out of character for him, siding on the side of the Sokovia Accords. I would disagree with that. People say like, oh, Tony's a wild card. He would never want people to control him. I think all the movies leading up to this point, Tony has struggled with the idea of asking for help. He struggled for control over his life and situations he faces. But in Civil War, once he's confronted with the deaths he couldn't save, he realizes that the Avengers may never be enough to save everyone's life, which is what he wants to do.
Exactly, and you have to look at it from his perspective, because he created Ultron, not fully intentionally. That mess that came from what he was trying to do, that was Ultron. He created Ultron, and subsequently, I guess, those armies that Ultron brought to Sokovia, and that whole mess, all those deaths. If he's worried by going into a black hole into space, and he's worried about just some aliens that came to invade New York, can you imagine how much that kills him inside to know that like all those are on him because he created Ultron, which caused that whole mess? So of course he's gonna sit and agree with the people saying that they need to be kept in check. Captain America's gonna see it as, oh no, I'm Mr. Golden Boy, we're doing the right thing. And Tony's looking at it like, I was already paranoid before. The way I see it, I did that. And if I can just do that on a whim by accident, I don't think any of us should be trusted with the ability to just roam about as we please.
The idea of him grappling with his responsibility really comes twofold with Peter Parker. He becomes like a pseudo father figure to the kid, even though I'm not sure he really was a good father figure. Like, he brought Peter into Civil War, and he was convinced that Bucky murders people. Like, he was like, yeah, no, I'm gonna put a 14-year-old in the line of fire of some unstable lunatic with a gun.
Yeah, I mean, obviously at the time he wasn't really a father figure to Peter. That was more as after Homecoming and everything, and as all that went on.
Yeah.
Still, that kind of makes it worse. He found this random kid on YouTube and was like, I don't need to hold auditions. This kid's got webs.
He becomes more directly responsible for Peter later on.
Definitely.
And he's still pretty arrogant in Infinity War. And when it comes to protecting Earth, and ultimately that arrogance is what led to his downfall and what led to him failing at his responsibility to keep Peter safe.
Well, yeah, that's like the pinnacle of his depression as a superhero at that point. Like, Thanos is, snap away half of existence, which takes out a lot of Tony's friends, like the few friends that he had that he actually cared about. Yeah. This son that he adopted flies away into dust in his arms, and that has got to suck. Scenes in Endgame, you see he's got pictures of Peter. Like, he didn't just forget about this kid. He's been thinking about this since the day he lost.
Because ultimately, whenever he decides to be like, right, I'm going to see if time travel works and stuff, it ultimately speaks to Tony's character. Tony, he technically wins a lot of the battles that he's been in so far, but every single battle he's actually lost, if you think about it.
Yeah.
He's just losing more and more of his mental state.
Yeah.
Once he time travels, he fixes everything, he has the big battle with Thanos, he sacrifices himself, and ultimately that shows that he just kept pushing. He kept pushing to be a better person. He went from a selfish, egotistical arms dealer to a man who knows how to sacrifice for the good of others, right?
Yeah.
Tony's dead now.
Do you think if I poke the reactor enough, it'll jumpstart him?
We've seen in Far From Home that there's bound to be a bunch of secrets and very powerful tech he was working on that people are probably going to want to get their hands on,
Dude, if I had a pair of Ray-Bans that could eliminate the world... There's
got to be some plot line where Tony has left another MacGuffin of some kind behind that everyone then battles over. I quite like the idea that there's like an anti-Avengers protocol. People say that's maybe not too much of a Tony thing, maybe more of a Nick Fury thing. Oh, like imagine if he got like the reset codes to Bucky, or if he like found a way to disrupt Scarlet Witch's abilities. I mean, there's a ton of ways that Tony has impacted the MCU that will leave lasting effects on the universe in general. He could be inspiring other heroes. I mean, Zach, what if I told you that Iron Man is more than just one person? He's an idea. There have been many different iterations of Iron Man, right? And I'm sure you know. Let me quiz you on a few here, Zach. Okay. You've heard of Iron Man, right?
Yeah, it's a little foggy, maybe.
All right, what about Iron Patriot? Yeah, you know Iron Patriot.
Yes, right? I know Iron Patriot. I think he was in Endgame. In Endgame, that was Warmachine. He put on the Iron Patriot suit, but I know what you're talking about, yeah. What
about Iron Maiden?
You mean like the band?
Not the band, Zach. No, not the band. Obviously not the band.
The medieval torture weapon?
No, it's a female version of Tony Stark called Antoinette Stark.
I don't like where this is going. Iron Woman isn't good enough? Iron Maiden, really?
Oh, well, here's the thing, right? There's actually an Iron Maiden in their universe as well. Iron Maiden, like Antoinette Stark's from a different universe. Not to be confused with Melina Vostokov, who was part of the Black Widow program, who took on the mantle of Iron Maiden.
Okay.
But, okay, how about this? What about Iron Mandrill?
Now that one's new.
It's a monkey version of Tony Stark.
No, it's not.
Right? Yes, it is.
No, you're lying.
Crazy, dude.
That's not a thing. thing
I am
that
not
exists.
lying. There's this Iron Lord, or Lord Iron, right? He's like a steampunk version of Iron Man.
Okay, that one's my favorite. That sounds sick.
That would be pretty crazy. Go as far as the DC Marvel crossovers, and you've got Iron Lantern, who's a combination of Green Lantern and Iron Man, right?
Ryan Reynolds and Tony Stark, and Robert Downey Jr. had a baby.
There are different versions of Iron Man, right? Like the different universes that probably won't be coming into the MCU because there's different universe stuff.
I hope we get the monkey one.
But if you want Iron Man to return, right, it doesn't have to just be Tony Stark. It may not be Peter Parker. Someone's going to fill the Technomancer role eventually, right?
Yeah.
Like we've got Happy Hogan, right, his bodyguard. Jon Favreau really did himself a favor by casting himself.
Is he really a bodyguard? Is he bodyguarding anything? The only thing he's guarding is Aunt May at this point. That's all he's guarding.
There's like in line with the tech stuff, like the stealing Iron Man's old tech. You've got Weasel Wills from the comics. He's a guy who stole the Iron Man armor to do criminal stuff. You've got Eddie March coming in with like the thing where Iron Man's death inspires people, right?
Yeah.
Edward March is a retired boxer who looked up to Tony and took on the mantle when Tony no longer wanted it. I imagine it being like he's at like a memorial or something like that and looks up to Tony, and he starts training or starts looking into all this stuff. This is even counting like other superheroes and villains. You know, Steve Rogers at one point, he stole the suit or borrowed the suit.
Yeah.
Hey Tony, do you mind if I take us out for a test drive? It's like stealing the keys for his car or something. You've got Green Goblin / Norman Osborn who takes it, but then he remembered like he wasn't a good guy, he needed to be evil.
Yeah, that one would be fun. The Norman Osborn one would be really fun, but you'd have to figure that out with Sony, honestly.
Deadpool gets his hands on an Iron Man suit at one point.
That one's a little more possible.
Yeah, it is a bit
and
more
actually
possible,
very
but
in character for the current like movie universe Deadpool.
Someone I really want to see after Iron Man like kind of disappearing and stuff like that is Riri Williams, i.e. Ironheart.
Yes.
You know,
that's
like,
what I've been waiting to talk about. Personally, I believe Ironheart would work the best. While I know, as someone who very much loves Spider-Man, I know there is a lot of debate in the Spider-Man fandom of whether or not they like this Iron Man Jr. angle that they're taking with Peter Parker. Personally, I kind of disagree with it. I don't see it as an Iron Man Jr. thing. I see it as it's just a different take of Spider-Man. I don't think I would want like the Iron Man successor, I guess, to be someone who's like, oh, Tony, you were such an inspiration in my life and whatever, blah, blah, blah. Because I haven't fully read a lot of the Ironheart comics, but from what I can remember, I think she just like she's just super smart. She builds her own, and it would work perfectly for the MCU. Then it's, you know, here's a new angle. It's not just someone inspired by Tony again, because there haven't been like too many characters inspired to take up the mantle right now. But if you look at the Spider-Man movies, both of the villains that they've had, Vulture and Mysterio, have both had influence from Tony Stark's actions. In Spider-Man Homecoming, it's Tony Stark and his like private cleanup crew that get Adrian Toomes and his crew off the cleanup job from the Chitauri incident from the first Avengers movie.
Yeah.
So they get taken off it, they lose a lot of money. Adrian Toomes is mad. They steal the tech, whatever. Mysterio, Jake Gyllenhaal, the boy, Quentin Beck, was him and his crew were all like former employees of Tony. It doesn't make for the greatest Spider-Man villain normally, but with the way they set up Peter in this universe, that he worked closely with Tony, it makes sense that they would cross paths, right? Like it works. So I think if you were to have the Iron Man successor be like, I think it would be great if she just comes in, stumbles upon the tech, builds it herself like she does in the comics, and then if you wanted to, if you being Marvel and Disney, I'm talking to you guys because I know you're listening to me. If you wanted to, the Ironheart comics has Riri Williams with a Tony Stark AI that is left behind with the tech. So what they could do is, if they want Tony to come back, but not really, so he doesn't really exist, he could be in AI format, like a Jarvis type or a Friday type or a Ultron type. You can have him come back like that, and then it's a little holographic Tony, or even just the voice. Like either of those would be fine. So there you go. You have RDJ back as Tony Stark, but not in the Iron Man mantle. He is not taking up the helm. It is now new, young, cool, like powerful from a business perspective. It's the young, cool, hip kid taking up the role. So then all the younger kids who have allowances to spend see that, and they're like, oh, that's perfect. I feel like this Iron Man, Ironheart, because it's not an old ass white dude, it's a young girl.
But of course, if you wanted Tony to actually come back, like they're gonna have like Iron Man almost come back, but not really, as many times as they can. For example, the LMDs, right? Life model decoys was a factor in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. They could maybe have him come back in that sense. There's gonna be flashbacks of some kind, you know. I don't think that Robert Downey Jr. is going to be gone from the role forever. He's got to come back at some point, even if it's like he's in his 80s.
There's apparently a lot of talk going around of, because the Black Widow movie coming out is a prequel, right? There was a lot of talk of Tony Stark appearing in that movie. If it happens, cool. I think it kind of, you know, went out on a bit of a high note with the Endgame and then Far From Home follow-up, because that's like showing the aftermath of Tony's death and everything with Endgame, right? Far From Home leads in like the world is mourning Iron Man. There's crappy tribute videos made by high schools. There's documentaries about him. There's murals painted everywhere. And then you've got this kid who feels like he's got to step up. And it's a really good way of like introducing the MCU fans into a world without Iron Man, because the movie tells you itself by telling it to Peter that Iron Man is always going to be present in the world as like a memory and a legacy for all these people and all the people he helped. But there's going to be other heroes that can step up and that people will look up to and see as their protector. You don't have to be literally the next Iron Man. Like you said earlier, Iron Man can be an idea. The idea of like this protector. Do something kind of like that, where it's like a legacy that lives on in the spirit of other heroes and heroes that come up. Because one thing that I was thinking of, when we're, you know, talking about all these different ways that Iron Man could come back or his legacy would live on or whatever, is there's this animated movie that I forget when it came out. It was late 2000s, I think. It was called The Next Avengers Heroes of Tomorrow, I think is what it's called. Yeah. But Next Avengers is about, you know, the heroes kids who kind of discover their parents' old equipment and tech and everything.
And like an after-school club.
Yeah, My Hero Academia, but for Captain America and his buds. What they do is, you know, they get all their parents' equipment and they form like this new team of the new Avengers. You have Captain America's kid, Thor's daughter, Black Panther's kid, and then you have Old Man Iron Man and Hulk. They're both mentoring this new team. So Tony's alive in this movie, but obviously you can change it. You know, it doesn't have to be the new Avengers. It could be a different type of team. There's so many teams in the Marvel Universe. You don't just have to stick with the Avengers, but if you want to, you can, because the Avengers is not one continuous team with the same members throughout its whole existence. The original Avengers that was first introduced in the comics when the Avengers first came out is not even the same team we see in the first movie. It mostly consists of the same people, but some key like founding Avengers members are not in the movie.
Yeah, and just like Iron Man as a hero, it doesn't need to be just Tony Stark filling that role, either as somebody comes in and takes in over the role of Iron Man, or somebody just takes up the role of what Iron Man was in the team of Avengers, but not necessarily in the Avengers. More than anything, Iron Man is an idea. The thing about the suit is that anyone can wear it. Seeing someone else don the armor, people in the Spider-Man canon tend to take the armor every once in a while.
Yeah.
Iron Man has laid the foundations for the Avengers, and his effect in the MCU won't be gone, even if he's not resurrected later on in some way. There are tons of conflicts and plots that can be fulfilled by his death as the motivation. But if anything, there will definitely need to be another techno whiz joining up soon.
Oh yeah,
maybe Riri Williams could be the next person. I mean, I'm kind of hoping. Yeah,
me too. I want her to show up. I want her to come in. She would be so cool to have in there. She would kick so much ass.
So there's potential for Iron Man to come back. Maybe not Robert Downey Jr. reprising his role in the armor. If anything, Iron Man will remain in effect in the MCU for years to come. Thank you so much for tuning in. I want to hear from you guys, your theories about Tony Stark's eventual return. In some convoluted way, we know we'll be brought up again. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments, on Twitter, wherever. We'd love to hear from you. Be sure to follow us so you can get in on this conversation. Thanks, guys, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye!